I didn't expect that Africa could produce such a good-looking horror movie. The realistic special effects alone can beat most horror movies. The film tells the story of an ancient fungus growing in an uninhabited primeval forest. The fungus will release deadly bunpowder to humans. Once accidentally inhaled, all kinds of mushrooms you like to eat will grow from the skin, and then the whole body will be parasitized by the mushrooms until it turns into a zombie-like Genjun Kai. This movie can be said to be a real meal movie, especially if you like to eat mushrooms. Friends who are friends must not miss it. It is 2021. The story of Gaia, which was released in 2016, also begins with a pair of spiritual guardians who like to do death. The two rowed a boat and broke into this terrifying virgin forest. But right there, when Ajen used a drone to observe the situation in the forest, Sahi suddenly photographed a figure and knocked down the drone. Although she knew that there might be danger ahead, Ajen still ignored her. Hei stopped and insisted on going to the forest to retrieve the drone. Because time was limited, Lao Hei wanted to go to the next location, so the two decided to split up and agreed to meet here in an hour. Little did they know that the body of the drone had been taken away. They were the savages who had just appeared in the camera. The place where the two passed by was filled with terrible bunpowder and garbage left by uninvited guests. In order to prevent modern humans from invading, they set up deadly traps along the way. If nothing unexpected happened, Ajen would have done it. Unexpectedly, he was hit by a spike that penetrated the sole of his foot. The screams echoed throughout the forest. The helpless Ajen could only pick up the walkie-talkie and ask for help from Lao Hei. Lao Hei, who was checking the camera, seemed to have heard the scream and realized that Ajen was probably in danger. When there was a threat, he rushed back to the boat. However, he was so anxious that the walkie-talkie fell into the water. When Lao Hei picked up the walkie-talkie, when I woke up, I discovered that he was damaged, resulting in a complete loss of contact between the two. Noticing the darkening sky, Lao Hei hurried back to the meeting spot to search for Ajen. However, Ajen, feeling isolated and helpless, had no choice but to prioritize self-preservation. Enduring intense pain, he removed the sharp thorns, causing a cloud of bunpowder to fill the air. As the sky grew darker, a strange red light emerged in the distance. Lost and limping, Ajen stumbled upon an unexpected room. Opening the door of the rundown cabin, I saw signs of someone living there but had no time to dwell on it. Exhausted, Ajen quickly found a place to rest. Due to inhaling the bunpowder, she began coughing uncontrollably and spat out phlegm. My hands transformed into hericium mushrooms momentarily. Thankfully, it was just a dream. But before I could fully recover, the two savages barged in. It turned out to be their pallbearer. However, I discovered that Ajen was wounds and cooked a lavish dinner. These two savages were actually father and son, with the father, Lao Di, being a botanist. They had come to this virgin forest for his research, but tragedy struck when the mother died from a terminal illness after giving birth to their son, Xiaodi. For over 2 decades, the father and son have lived in isolation in the forest, with Xiaodi having no knowledge of the outside world. As they watched Ajen sleep, Xiaodi's curiosity grew. Meanwhile, Lao Hei, still searching for Ajen, faced misery in the silent forest. Suddenly, a terrifying creature emerged from the darkness, causing Lao Hei to hide behind a tree. But the monster had already so surprised that he looked back carefully and saw a twisted humanoid creature. Lao Hei was frightened and got up and ran away desperately, but the monster was chasing after him. In panic, he accidentally fell to the ground and was about to pick it up. When I dropped the flashlight, I realized that the monster had arrived in front of me. It was a Genjun monster covered in mushrooms, and it would spit out deadly bunpowder from its mouth. No matter how old Hei escaped, the monster could always find his weird tentacles and reach over silently. Hei was infected by the monster and infected Genjun. On the other side, Ajen also had mushrooms growing on her body because she inhaled the bunpowder. He reluctantly pulled out the mushrooms on his arm, but soon more mushrooms would grow. Ajen, suddenly, he woke up from his sleep. Fortunately, it was just a dream, but he didn't know that this dream was about to become a reality. It was already dawn, and the father and son had come outside early to hunt. Ajen took the opportunity to call Lao Hei, but what he received in response was a faint gasp. Ajen knew that Lao Hei was in a very dangerous situation, so when the father and son came back from hunting, they asked them to save their companions. But Lao Di decisively chose to refuse because, in his opinion, no one can survive a night in the forest. After hearing what Lao Di said, Ajen stopped talking. However, something terrible happened late at night. Ajen, who was sleeping soundly, was suddenly covered by Lao Di. He opened his mouth and signaled him not to make a sound because there was an uninvited guest outside. Apparently, the Genjun monster discovered them. Xiaodi pointed his bow and arrow at the wooden door vigilantly, ready to attack at any time. Lao Di told Jen that the things outside had no vision, and as long as they didn't make any sound, it would be fine. But the Genjun monster didn't seem to intend to leave his side. He kept banging on the door while slowly extending his tentacles towards Ajen at the critical moment. Lao Di shun. He quickly turned around and cut off the steamed stuffed buns with a knife. Instantly, Lao Di quickly covered his mouth and pen, but the next second, the real monster broke through the door and knocked him to the ground on the spot. Although this guy has no vision, his hearing and touch are extremely developed. Any slight, he caught every sound. Perhaps it was because it was the first time he saw such a terrifying monster. Ah-Jen couldn't help but scream. Unfortunately, the monster locked his position. However, he did not sit still and stab the little boy with the dagger in his hand. Dai also took the opportunity to follow closely and stab the monster crazily. Finally, with the tacit cooperation of the three, the monster was successfully beaten away. However, Lao Di's arm was scratched by the monster. Such a wound was enough to make him infected with fungus. At the same time, Ah-Jen also. The situation became more and more serious because of being infected with the monster's blood. It was only now that Lao Di told Ah-Jen that there was a deadly ancient fungus in the buns placed will enter the human body through the respiratory tract and eyes, and then slowly erode the infected person's body. The monster just now is the final appearance of the infected Genjun. The reason why he stayed in the forest was to study this kind of Genjun, but Ah-Jen didn't. What I know is that Lao Di also concealed one thing, which is that the Genjun virus in the infected person's body can be alleviated. There is a magical tree in the forest that Lao Di worships as a god. He only needs to offer offerings and pray sincerely to use fresh blood as nutrients. A special mushroom will grow in the hole of the tree. This mushroom is the only antidote for Genjun's infection. However, it can only relieve the infection but cannot completely eradicate it, so it needs to be taken regularly because there were 2 people in the battle with Genjun monster last night. Lao Di had come to the woods to pray for the antidote. After taking the antidote, the wound on his arm miraculously healed immediately. His arms were already covered. They did not prepare anything for Ah-Jen, but Lao Di was ready to send Ah-Jen back to the human world immediately. Although Xiao Di was extremely reluctant to leave, there was nothing he could do. On the way, Ah-Jen was curious about why the 2 of them had lived in the forest for so long. Infected, but Lao Di only said that he had been infected, but did not tell about the antidote. Then Ah-Jen found Lao Hei's flashlight on the road. He immediately went to look for it regardless of Lao Di's obstruction, only to find a creepy screen. Seeing that Lao Hei's body was covered with various fungi, it had almost merged with the big tree behind him, although there was still a trace of corpse left. It was very painful. Ah-Jen didn't want to do this, but Lao Di knew that Lao Hei had already rescued him, so he sent the arrow to him. He entered his mouth and ended it by himself. Before Ah-Jen had time to feel sad, Lao Di urged her to leave because there was a strange roar from the Genjun nearby. It seemed that the 2 of them couldn't leave today. He quickly returned to the cabin and closed all the doors and windows. Fortunately, the monster Genjun did not catch up with him. However, at night, enoki mushrooms grew in Ah-Jen's ears, and various Genjun appeared on her legs. But Lao Di turned a blind eye. Jen knew that Lao Di must have the antidote, so she begged him to save her. Perhaps because of her conscience, she discovered that Lao Di came to the big tree again and wanted to get an antidote for Jen. But this time, the tree did not accept his sacrifice. It gave him an unacceptable hint. Taking advantage of the swordplay when old Di left, Ah-Jen began to discuss life with Xiao Di because she had never been in contact with a woman since she was a child and had never felt maternal love. Xiao Di soon fell in love. Ah-Jen wanted to take Xiao Di to the human world and find a job in the same city of Wuba. From then on, they would live a shy life with him. Unexpectedly, Lao Di suddenly returned to the wooden house and saw the 2 of them. People's relationships progress so fast and he doesn't say more. The next morning, Lao Di put the remaining antidote into Xiao Di's mouth. However, Xiao Di did not swallow the antidote immediately. Instead, he quickly returned to the wooden house and fed the antidote while Lao Di was not paying attention. Not long after entering Ah-Jen's mouth, the mushroom on Ah-Jen's thigh disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. Lao Di, who followed, did not stop but asked Ah-Jen when she was leaving, but Ah-Jen said she wanted to stay. Obviously, she wanted to take Xiao Di with her. In the following time, the relationship between the 2 became closer and closer. In order to make Ah-Jen believe in the gods he believed in, Lao Di conducted a mysterious ceremony. As Lao Di brought the powder blew on Ah-Jen's face, and he instantly entered a strange fantasy world. In the fantasy world, Ah-Jen saw the big tree connected to the gods, and learned that the sacrifice the tree wanted the antidote turned out to be that the gods were dissatisfied. The reason why Lao Di didn't get it that night and explicitly asked Xiao Di to be a sacrifice. In order to obtain the antidote so that he would not be corrupted by the true Lord, Lao Di agreed, so as not to let Xiao Di become a sacrifice. After all, Ah-Jen decided to take him away immediately. Unexpectedly, they collided with Lao Di as soon as they walked out of the cabin. Seeing Xiao Di preparing to leave, Lao Di played the emotional card. Although Xiao Di wanted to leave with Ah-Jen after all, he grew up with his father, but finally chose to stay under his constant deception. Little did he know that this seemingly loving father just wanted to use him as a sacrifice. Lao Di turned around and took him to the big tree, preparing to set up a trap right away. A knife was stabbed hard on Xiao Di's back. Only then did Xiao Di see his father's true face clearly, but it was too late to escape. The dripping blood woke up the sleeping tree. Lao Di pressed him tightly. Under the tree, the roots immediately entangled his arms tightly, and the sky fell into darkness. There was only one last critical moment left. Ah-Jen appeared in time to close him. He was still worried about Xiao Di, so he turned back and Lao Di decided to solve it first. Ah-Jen was hit in the thigh by the opponent's precise sword. Obviously, Ah-Jen did not want to kill Lao Di, but only wanted to make him incapacitated. But the already crazy Lao Di did not appreciate it and knocked down Ah-Jen with a backhand axe and was ready to hurt him. The killer saw that his new girlfriend was about to be hacked to death by her father. Xiao Di, who was trapped by the tree roots, burst out with great strength. He was using his restraints to successfully stop Lao Di and his son. The battle started immediately. But at this time, Zhen Zhengui also joined the battle, and preparing to attack Ah Zhen, who fell to the ground, Xiao Di had no choice but to take the time to rescue him, but finally managed to force the monster back. Then he saw his father aiming the axe at Ah Zhen. He responded again and stabbed his father mercilessly. Xiao Di. Under the opponent's balloon, Xiao Di didn't hurt the killer, but the monster came back to kill him again. When Zhen saw this, he quickly pulled Xiao Di away. Lao Di, who stayed behind, was miserable. The next day, after becoming a lamb to be slaughtered, his body was covered with Ganoderma lucidum. He cut his palm open and tried to exchange blood for the antidote from the tree. Unfortunately, he did not get a response. Because there was no antidote to suppress the virus in his body, he returned to the cabin. Ah Zhen was also gradually devoured by Zhen Jun. After just a few hours, her entire body was occupied by various mushrooms. In pain, Ah Zhen pulled out the dagger from Xiao Di and ended her life. Xiao Di outside could only watch helplessly. With all this, his father and lover left this place one after another. It was no longer worth lingering on. At the end of the movie, Xiao Di came to the human world mentioned carrying by deadly fungi, but he didn't know that there was still something in his after eating the burger. It seems that a greater crisis is about to sweep the world. Please don't forget to like and share with your friends. And remember to turn on the little bell.